We're going to go ahead and get started with Wyman's presentation. This is Wyman Morgan. He's the Director of Finance and Administration in the Mayor's Office. He can give you a little bit of background about how long he's been doing this.
I've been in government finance since the previous century. On the continuing education forms that I have to go to class each year on, it asks how many years experience you've got. Well, the last option on it is over 20, and I put 2 check marks by it. The most important thing to learn about finance and government is that no governmental entity has enough money to do what it expects, what the public expects it to do. Our assignment, or our job, is to take the tax revenue that the citizens are willing to pay us and put it into the services that they are expecting as efficiently as possible, knowing that each service needs more money, but there's just not that much money there. Our main sources of revenue are sales tax, and then we get state turnback, which is what the state allocates back to cities and counties from the revenue that it collects. And we get property tax and utility franchise taxes. Most of the property tax in Arkansas goes to the school system. In Arkansas, I think we've got one of the most equitable taxing systems in the nation. It's equally divided between property tax, sales tax, and income tax. Next. Now, since the biggest revenue source we've got is sales tax, we're constantly having to compete with providing services that our neighboring cities provide. But at the same time, our sales tax per capita is much less than theirs because we don't have the retail stores in Springdale that our competitors have. So we have to be a lot more efficient than our neighbors to provide the same services to our people. The first thing that a citizen wants is basic protection from violent crime. So your first need that they demand is police services, and that's one of our biggest budgets, $16.7 million. Probably 70% of that will go for salaries because you have to have officers, and then the rest will go for vehicles and equipment and stuff like that. After they feel safe from violent crime, they want protection and service for fire and ambulance service. So our next largest budget is fire department, with $12.6 million. About 90 to 95% of that budget goes for salaries. When you build one fire station, it costs $1 million a year to staff it in salaries, because you have to staff it 24/7 to make sure that there's somebody there to help you. After they feel safe from fire and the emergency medical needs and police protection, then they expect recreation. So our next budget is Parks and Recreation with $3.1 million. Next slide. Now, this one is kind of different. The others are paid out of the general fund, which general fund revenues can be used for any legitimate purpose. But there's dedicated revenue that's dedicated specifically for streets, so it's kind of stands alone as a separate budget with $7.2 million. In Northwest Arkansas, it's grown so fast that it's hard to keep up with the traffic flow and the demand. 15 years ago, when we started building the corridors, Sunset and 71B was the busiest intersection in the state of Arkansas, with over 100,000 vehicles a day going through that intersection. We built the corridors across town, and it's shifted now. Huntsville and 71B is now the busiest intersection, with over 80,000 vehicles a day, and Don Tyson and 71 is second, and Sunset is now third. But that's a lot of traffic in town to move around. And it was like this morning, there was one accident on 71B. In just a matter of seconds or a matter of minutes, traffic was backed up a half mile in each direction from that traffic accident. So moving traffic around is very important. This shows the general fund. There's a lot of departments paid out of the general fund that are look minuscule compared to fire and police. You see that the majority of the budget goes to fire and police. But putting the budget together each year is a challenge to allocate the money, especially when each department has more needs than what we have money for. For capital improvement projects like the corridors and stuff like that, we borrow money to build it because it's more money than we can raise in 1 year. We started in 2003 with the first bond issue. We had to vote in 2003, but there's a federal requirement that when you borrow tax-free money, you have to spend it within 3 years. Well, we got authority to borrow $105 million to build roads, but we couldn't build $105 million worth of roads in 3 years. So we only sold $60 million to start with, and we started the crosstown corridors. Then in 2006, we came back, and the other issue had come up about a minor league ballpark in Springdale. And we put that on the ballot with the remainder of the road money, and the people approved it. To attract industry into town, we wanted it to improve the quality of life for the citizens. The industry wants to know if they can make or get their employees to live here. And so we wanted the ballpark to have affordable entertainment for families to have something to do in Springdale. And they approved it, so we sold $124 million. Well, in 2012, we were feeling pressure again from need for roads, so we did another bond issue to make road improvements. And then in 2013, we refinanced the 2006 bonds because the interest rate had gone lower, and we refinanced them and saved quite a bit of money on the bond issue. Now in 2018, we're planning to retire the rest of the 2013 bonds and issue about $150 million in additional bonds if it passes on the ballot. We've got several projects lined up for it. And that's part of what I do is long-range planning. Probably about $80 million in road improvements, 3 new fire stations, a new animal shelter, and a new criminal justice complex. And all that takes, the criminal justice complex I've been working on probably for 5 years and stuff. Now, I know y'all haven't got the idea that accountants are boring, but we're not. We're actually very exciting people. And I ran across this joke, which maybe only accountants understand. But I know you've all heard of the stock market. Well, every day somebody makes a sale and somebody else makes a buy. But they both think they're smart. And they might actually be, depending on the reasons they sold and the reasons they buy. But it's kind of unusual that both of them think they got the best part of the deal in the buy and sell each day. In doing long-range planning, we have to determine the most efficient use of our money. Well, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Program, requires each county to do a disaster study. And I reviewed the disaster study of Washington County to see what happened. Well, in 10 years, we've had 0 tornadoes in Springdale. We've had 4 flash floods, 16 winter storm occurrences, 3 days of extreme heat, and 0 earthquakes. So looking at that, instead of spending money on earthquakes, tornadoes, we've spent most of our emergency preparedness money for severe weather storms. Has anybody got any questions? Now I do the long-range planning. Go ahead.
So I saw that in 2006, the bond issue was 124 million. So in 2000, oh, that's loud. Sorry. In 2006, the bond issue was $124 million, which compared to the rest of the numbers is pretty high. So can you go over again why it was so high that year?
Okay. There's three parts to the bond issue. One part was to build the Arvest Ballpark, which was $50 million. Then the other part, second part, was the additional $45 million to finish the road projects. Then you had to retire the other bond issue before you could sell this bond issue. So the balance of it, after you deduct those two things out, was what was required to retire the 2004 bonds.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. They pretty much covered a lot of what I'm going to cover already, so I'm sorry if you have to hear it twice. I've been with the city for about 6 years, and before that I was an auditor for a public accounting firm, and I audited a lot of government entities. And then I enjoyed that so much that I wanted to work in government, and so here I am. The city clerk's office, we deal with a lot of pretty much every department when they receive funds or ordinances or resolutions are passed in their departments. It pretty much all flows through the city clerk's office, so we deal with every department head in the city pretty much. We have our city clerk. Her name is Denise Pierce. She has worked for the city since she was 19 years old. I think she started part-time. She is an elected official. The mayor, the city attorney, and city clerk are the only elected officials in the city. And her term is 4 years. So I think pretty much for those 20 years, I don't think anybody's run against her, maybe one time that I know of. So anyway, in her office, there is the finance director. Her name is Laura Favorite, and she's a CPA, just like Wyman and myself. And then the accountant, which is me. And then we have a payroll accountant who is over processing payroll for the whole city, every department. Then we have the accounts payable clerk. She is responsible for paying all the bills of the city. The department heads bring all the bills and invoices to her, and she's responsible for making sure they're properly approved and paying, printing the checks and mailing them out. And then we have two accounts receivable clerks, and they're responsible for billing, hangar rent, and doing business license renewals and stuff like that. In our office, it's very important that we have segregation of duties because we handle so much money that flows through our office. And so segregation of duties is very important part of internal control. Our office can be scrutinized because people don't want us to commit fraud or anything like that. So we try to make sure that everybody does their duties and nobody overlaps each other. Those are just some duties that always need to be segregated. Nobody should be able to have possession of the money, and they should not be able to record it in the general ledger. and then go and deposit it in the bank. There should be 3 people that do each of those. And then I just included the fraud triangle because it's easy for people to think they can get away with fraud. A lot of the reason people will rationalize it away. They might be able, like say somebody handles the money and takes it to the bank. Well, one day they might be like, oh, I have medical bills to pay and I need $20 to cover that for right now. And so they'll just rationalize it and say, oh, I'll pay it back next week when I get paid. Well, they'll see how easy that is, and then they just keep continuing to do that. And so that's why we have everybody doing their different duties within our office. So Denise, the city clerk treasurer, is responsible for the accounting, the budgeting, city records, the finance, insurance, and payroll. That's what our whole office handles. Accounts receivable, they're responsible for billing and invoicing of the business license renewals. We have over, I think, 3,000 businesses in our city, and every year we send out renewals for people to get a license to operate their business within our city. They're also responsible for false alarm payments. That is when a business, they have an alarm system, and then for some odd reason it malfunctions, or maybe somebody opens a door they weren't supposed to and the alarm goes off and the police and fire have to go out there. Well, if that happens too many times, since it costs the city money every time we go see them, we have to start billing them after, I think, maybe 5 times or something like that. So they're responsible for keeping track of that and then invoicing each business. And then they're responsible for billing and invoicing our hangars at the airport. I think we have over 100 hangars, and they bill every hangar monthly. And then they process the cash receipts that come through our office, such as the library. If you pay fines, overdue fines, that money comes to our office and we record it in the general ledger. The accounts payable, like I said earlier, they're responsible for paying all the bills and invoices for the city. Each department head, once a week, will gather all the bills that are due. They'll mark up what account they want it to be paid from, and then they bring it to our office. They have to sign and approve it, and then our accounts payable person goes through and makes sure that they have the proper information on there, that the authorized person signed off on them, and then she enters it into our general ledger and prepares the checks to be mailed, and she does that on a weekly basis. She also is responsible for making sure that we pay sales and use tax. A lot of people think that because we're a city government, since we receive sales and use tax funds, that we don't have to pay that, but we do. And so a lot of vendors will not put sales and use tax on their invoices, and so Janice goes through and if they don't have it on there, or if they have an incorrect amount, she'll call them and say, can you please send a new invoice over? We're not exempt, we have to pay this. And I know you guys talked about sales tax earlier. The state of Arkansas gets 6.5% of all sales tax revenue in Springdale. And then Washington County gets 1.25%. And then Springdale, we get 2% of whatever you purchase here in Springdale of that tax. And then we come to my role. I record all the revenues that come into the city, such as we receive grants, federal, state, and local grants. We get grants for police department, library, we get some grants, museum. So I'm responsible for that. The ad valorem, which is like the property taxes you guys talked about, sales taxes are portion of what we get back, that 2%, I record that. Franchise taxes and just different receipts throughout the city. I also do bank reconciliations. I do those monthly, and we have over 25 bank accounts, so that takes a while. I make sure there's no discrepancies, and make sure that all the checks written have cleared in a proper amount of time, and yeah, just make sure the bank agrees to what we show in our records as well. I post general entries to the general ledger, and I prepare different monthly reports. We prepare an AMP report for the Chamber of Commerce, and then I also prepare an airport hangar accounts receivable report for the Airport Commission, so they can see what hangars have not been paid that month, and if it's way overdue, they might contact them and try to get their money. I prepare a construction surcharge report that is in the building inspection department. When people come to get a buildings permit, we also have to remit a portion of that back to the state, and so I have to prepare a report showing that to send to the state and pay that. I prepare different revenue and expense reports for the different department heads, and I also have to remit the sales and use tax report every year, or every month. I'm not going to talk much about the budget because you guys have a copy of it, but we have to do that annually. It's required by a state statute, and it also needs to be approved by City Council. And as you can see, it includes the prior year's numbers, what the estimates are for the remainder of the current year, and then what different departments want for the upcoming year. And a very important thing about the budget is, since we're dealing with taxpayer money, we make sure that everything we budget, that we're not budgeting for more than we actually have or get or forecast. So, another thing the city clerk is responsible for is all the different records, such as recording the city council minutes, the different ordinances, resolutions. They're all kept in our office. We have files and files of these from years and years ago. I think we found some papers back from like the early 1900s up there one time. So, and a lot of that is being kept digitally now, so that's good. The city clerk, she's also the treasurer, so she's responsible for all our financial records, whatever the finance director, our budget, all that. Denise, the city clerk, is ultimately responsible to make sure that that's all correct. She also serves on the board of trustees for both the firemen and police pension funds, and I think they meet maybe monthly, maybe quarterly, I'm not sure. We mentioned that we have a Bluff Cemetery that we maintain. We also issue deeds. So like if somebody passes away, they come up to our office and they pay for different spaces where a person needs to be buried. And sometimes they decide they don't want to be buried there, so they come up, we give them a refund, and then somebody else requests they want that spot. So Denise also serves on the city council. Her responsibility is to transcribe every meeting and record those. And then she also is responsible for all the city council members, planning commission, they have to file a statement of financial interest. And she's responsible for collecting those and taking them to the county to get filed. And then she's responsible for all the elections within the city. She has to coordinate those with the election committee. Like the bond that's coming up for election, she's gonna have to work with the election committee and get that all set up and on the ballot and all that. So this is a lot of what our office does. We're responsible for different licenses and permits. Business licenses are probably our most time-consuming. There's new businesses opening every day, and one's going out of business every day. The Hotel-Motel Tax, every hotel and motel pay 2% of their revenues each month. So we have to record that and make sure that every hotel comes in and pays that. There's a lot of people that try to skip out. Every restaurant or store that sells alcohol, they have to pay a 5% tax on all their alcohol sales. All stores and restaurants that sell beer, they have to have a beer permit, and that is a calculation based upon their beer sales from the previous year. Firework permits, every year at 4th of July, you see the fireworks stands set up. Well, those stands have to come in and they get a permit. They have to pay $500, I think, and then the fire inspector has to come out and make sure that they're selling the right fireworks and that their stand is set up in a place where they are able to sell that stuff. We also provide permits for street vendors and ice cream trucks. Everybody has to come that does that has to go through a background check, and then the ice cream trucks, well, I guess even the street vendors that sell food from their vehicles, their vehicles have to be inspected by a police officer. And then we issue taxi permits. They also have to go through a background check, and then I think the company pays a fee, and then every taxi or every car has to pay, and driver has to also pay a certain fee. And then we also provide solicitors permits. You guys have probably seen the no soliciting stickers, signs throughout the city. Well, they have to make sure they adhere to that. But they come in and they get a permit that they have to carry on their person at all times when they're out soliciting. And if nobody has one of those signs or stickers, they're allowed to go up and try to sell you something. Another thing that our office does is that we have to do notices in the newspaper. We have to publish every ordinance, and we have to publish when there's going to be different elections, and there's certain financial information on an annual basis that we have to report in the newspaper for taxpayers to see. Our finance director does a lot. She works a lot with Wyman on our investments and how to invest our money that we receive from all the taxpayers. We want to make sure that we get the most use out of the money that we receive, and they work together to see if they need to invest in bonds, CDs, or different securities. She prepares and interprets different financial information for all the different department heads. A lot of time when the budget's being prepared, they'll call and ask her, oh, can you run me this report from last year and tell me why this expense account was so much? And so she does a lot with that. She also works hard on the budget, trying to develop the current year's estimates, what people think they're going to have to spend for the rest of the year, and what they might end up spending for the next year. She's responsible for the general ledger accounts and make sure that everything is recorded properly in each account. and she maintains our capital asset records, such as like the capital projects that you guys were talking about earlier. She makes sure to keep track of those, and she has to assign a value to everything and make sure everything is depreciated properly. And she is responsible for issuing the financial statements, and for those we have to follow GAAP, which is generally accepted accounting principles, and generally government accounting standards board standards. And she's responsible for making sure that every year when they come out with new rules and standards that our city adheres to those and that we're disclosing what we need to disclose. And then she prepares different annual reports. I know right now she's working on one for the pension board, and then she does a lot for the U.S. Census. And that's how we get a lot of our funds is people look at the U.S. Census report, and so to see where we fall compared to different cities. So that's an important report she does. She wanted me to put this in here. It's we do the financial statement audit. It's very important. We have to do one every year. A lot of grants that we receive they require for us to have this done, and a lot of the bond covenants that we do, we also have to have financial statement audit, and that just means that an independent auditor comes and performs an audit and make sure that we're recording what we need to record, and that we're dealing with the taxpayer money the way we need to be. I didn't bring everybody one because it's sort of boring, but it's on the website. If you guys want to read it to go to sleep or something, feel free to look it up. But if you want to pass that around, that's our financial statement audit. There's different sections in there. The independent auditor's report that tells us if we passed the audit or if there's things that we need to work on. They look at that first thing that I talked about, internal control, a lot, and make sure that we're following that we have good internal control, and that we are handling taxpayer money well. It also includes the management's discussion analysis. That's when Denise, the mayor, and Laura talk about what we're going to do if there were findings in the audit, how we're going to resolve them. Then the financial statements, which is like the balance sheet, the revenue and expense reports, and there's some budget information in there as well. The required, there's also, I forgot to put in there, notes to the financial statements, and that describes each of the financial statements and goes into depth what each fund or anything is made up of. There's required supplementary information, and then all the grants that we receive from federal and state agencies, we have to disclose those, and that's in the back. Just to take up more time, I included, we have different types of funds, like Melissa alluded to earlier. We have governmental funds, and in those, we have the general fund, which is where pretty much all of admin is paid out of, special revenue, debt service, capital projects, and permanent funds. Capital projects are what you guys talked about earlier, like the street. Permanent funds are, I don't know if we have any of those, but we have 18 governmental funds in total. And then we have proprietary funds, that's enterprise and internal service. Enterprise funds are like business operated activities, such as like the aquatic center or the airport, where we actually get revenue for services. And then we have fiduciary, which is our pension funds, investment, private purpose, and agency funds. The agency funds are like for district court when we receive fines, court costs, things like that. Since we're like a pass-through and we pass it along, that's considered an agency fund. Financial statement audit, we have to have that annually, and like I said, it has to be prepared in accordance with generally accepted principles and our government accounting standards board. Pretty much what we do is make sure that our balance sheet accounts are all reconciled and that they balance, ins and outs balance. We make sure that our accruals and deferrals are all recorded, that we recognize revenue when it's supposed to be recognized, and that our revenues and expenses match. And then we also, in order to do that, we have to prepare different worksheets for the auditors to show them why we think the balance is what it is. I included an example here. It's really hard to see, but this is one of our travel advance accounts, and I just reconciled the expenses for the year. Another thing our office does is insurance. We deal directly with the Arkansas Municipal League on insuring all the assets of the city. That includes all our vehicles. We have over 485 vehicles. This includes all fire trucks, police trucks, street maintenance vehicles, mowers, etc. And then we have to insure all the assets of the city. This includes all our buildings, different property that's throughout the city. And then our last function of our office is payroll, and this is very important because employees are our biggest asset of the city. Our payroll accountant processes payroll for all the departments. I think it's over 550 employees on a bi-weekly basis every 2 weeks. And then she also does extra payroll such as holiday pay, the sick leave bonus, clothing allowance for police officers and fire. And she also processes payroll for our city council and planning commission members, and also different retired elected officials, and that happens on a monthly basis. And then we also process payroll for our pension funds. These are retired police and fire that still draw a pension from the city. She makes sure that we file the proper payroll withholding reports with the state and federal, and then she files other quarterly and annual reports, whatever the law tells us we need to. So, does anybody have any questions?
So you mentioned that there was taxi permits. How many do you typically give out? 'Cause it's Uber, that's what it's called. Has Uber changed that?
Not really. What? 30? Sorry, what? Yeah. No, not taxi coupons, taxi permits. Do you know? I don't think we have many of those. So, yeah. And I did see an Uber car driving today, so I know they're starting to get popular up here.
So one thing I was wondering about, can you tell me what the definition of hangar is? Like the airport hangar?
That is where people store their airplanes.
Okay. And another question I had, on the accounting slide, when you went over your responsibilities in the office, they all seem pretty important, but also very tedious. So how do you account for if you make a mistake or a mistake happens? Like, I assume you use programs to do the things you do sometimes.
Yes.
So how do you account for those mistakes? Because they seem like really important jobs.
That's the finance director. She reviews all my work.
So you were talking about the types of funds. What does fiduciary mean?
Fiduciary, that is when we are sort of in charge and responsible for funds for somebody else. Like we're actually holding the funds and we make sure that they're paid out in accordance with how they're supposed to be paid.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Lindsay. We appreciate you taking time.
I bet you I don't need this. How's that? Well, we're being recorded. Oh, we're being recorded. Hello. Where's the camera? All right. Revenue, tourism. How many of you are tourists? You're a tourist? You're not a tourist? Oh, you live here? Oh, okay. Y'all don't live here, but you're not tourists. Okay. Ever been to a Northwest Arkansas Naturals game? Ah, you're a tourist. You just live here. Tourism, let me back up. The Chamber is the lead economic developer for our city. In that role, we work to create jobs for Springdale. We do that in several ways. We help existing companies who have been here, we help them grow and expand so that they can hire more people. We also recruit companies that are not in Springdale, trying to get them to come here so that they will create jobs and hire more people. Why do we want more people here to have jobs? Right, so they can pay taxes, but that's part of it, and from the perspective y'all are looking at from city government, we want more tax revenue so we can pay for the services that the city provides, and so we can have even more and better services. But we want people to have jobs because they make money, they were able to provide for their family. They'll buy homes, they'll buy groceries, they'll buy clothes, they'll buy food, they'll buy things. You all buy things. And that not only helps the city through sales tax revenue, but it also helps those companies that are selling you something because they have families that need a paycheck, that need all the same things you need. So that's why economic development is important for any city. It's important for the businesses who hire people and pay salaries, and it's important for the cities because they need that sales tax revenue. So, how does tourism and visitors play into this? And I want to talk about there's a public component and there's a private component. So when we say public, we're talking about the city. And we talk about private, we're talking about the Northwest Arkansas Naturals, for example. So not just in Springdale, but even in the state of Arkansas, tourism is one of the biggest sources of revenue for the state of Arkansas. We are known as, what's our motto? What's the state's motto? The natural state. Come to Arkansas and float our rivers, hike our mountains, mountain bike our trails, go to our museums, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So tourism is very, very important. Arkansas is unique in our area because we have a lot of natural beauty, and there's lots of things you can do outside. But as we grow as a state, we have Crystal Ridges, and we have 2 minor league baseball teams. You go on and on and on. So we have a single source of revenue that we use as a city to get more people to come to Springdale as a tourist or a visitor. Now, state law has provides for cities to create something called an Advertising and Promotion Commission. Guess what they do? And promote. That's right. They advertise and they promote. And these We call them A&P commissions often. That's the A&P. Well, the A&P commission met, the Advertising and Promotion Commission. And these are the people who sit on these commissions are nominated by the mayor. And, I forget, I mean, there's 5 or 7 of them, I forget how many there are. But they serve terms, and they're just citizens, they're not paid to do that. But they, because the chamber has a contract with the city to manage the activities, they come together and make decisions on how to spend the revenue, the sales tax revenue that is generated in Springdale from a particular source. Who can guess what does Springdale tax that a tourist would spend money on? Does anybody have an idea? And when you go to other places, you do the same thing. Hotels. Could there be anything else that could be taxed? I'm sorry. Not gas. No, not gas. Yes, but what would we have sales tax on? Clothes? No. Clothes have sales tax, but that doesn't go toward this kind of thing. Food. We call it a hamburger tax. Springdale does not have a hamburger tax. But when you go to Fayetteville, you never go to Fayetteville and buy food, I'm sure. Or when you go to Bentonville and buy food, you're paying several kinds of sales tax. You're paying a city sales tax, you're paying a county sales tax, you're paying a state sales tax, and you're paying an A&P tax. It has a technical term, but that's what it is. It's a hamburger tax. In Springdale, when people come here, or when you just live here, you're paying it. When you go to McDonald's and buy a hamburger, you pay a city sales tax, a county sales tax, a state sales tax, and that's all. We don't currently have a hamburger tax in Springdale, but we do have a hotel tax. What do I want to say on that? There have been efforts to try to get a hamburger tax in Springdale. It doesn't go over very well because people think, well, gosh, I don't want to pay more for my hamburger with that money going to help get more people to come here. And I'm going to get to that. That's why we use the money from these taxes. Truth of the matter is, when you go anywhere and you buy a hamburger and they have a hamburger tax, you don't know it. It's whatever the cost of the hamburger is. But people are okay with generally having a hotel tax, because how often have you gone and stayed in a hotel in Springdale? People who are visiting or tourists, people who are from out, who don't live here, generally the people who live in who stay in hotels. And so it's like, well, sure, we don't mind taxing those people. We don't know them anyway. So that's where Springdale collects tourism sales tax revenue. What do we do with it? In fact, I have it here. Let's see. Here's the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last 6 years of revenue that's collected in Springdale from our hotel A&P tax. We have increased each year over year. So in 2012, we collected $311,000 from hotel sales taxes that's collected for hotel stays. $338,000 the next year, $376,000 the next year, $426,000 the next year, $468,000 the next year, and with 1 month left, we're at $443,000. So we've seen the revenue that we're collecting from hotel taxes go up each year. What do we use that money for? Why is that important in the bigger scheme of what city government needs that money for? Why would we use that money? Why do we have that tax? What's the name of the commission? The Advertising and Promotion Commission. We collect a sales tax on hotels when visitors come here, and we use the money that we collect to get more people to come here and stay in hotels. Now, when those people come here and they stay in that hotel, the tax we collect for that hotel stay goes to the Advertising and Promotion Commission. They use that money, those numbers I just read you, to advertise, to have a website, to promote Springdale as a place to come for meetings, for vacations, for when you come to a Razorback game, stay in Springdale, all those things. That's what that money's used for. Is that the only money that Springdale benefits from if you're a tourist or you're a businesswoman and you've come to Springdale? You stay in that hotel, so you've paid that tax. What else did you do when you were in Springdale? This gets back to what y'all were talking about a while ago. You're going to buy things. You're going to buy gas. You're going to eat. You might go to Walmart and buy something. So tourism is important, not just to have more hotel sales tax, but so that we have the resources to try to get more people to come to Springdale. When you're coming to Northwest Arkansas, we'd much rather you stay in Springdale than stay in Fayetteville or Rogers or Bentonville, because we can get revenue from you. It's a great place to stay. It's centrally located. And while you're here, you might just eat at one of our restaurants or buy gas at one of our gas stations. In Springdale, the sales tax that you talked about earlier, our city government gets that sales tax too. Now that sales tax is not, the sales tax that's not related to the hotels, that doesn't pay for promoting Springdale. That pays for city services. But it still helps Springdale. So finally, where's the private element of this? We're going to have a hotel tax, and the money from that is used to tell more people how great Springdale is, so more people will come. They come, they pay the hotel tax, but then they also buy some gas and buy some food. And so there's some more sales tax that the city of Springdale benefits from. But where's the other revenue stream in this that's good for Springdale? The private component. Let's list the people who. I'm the tourist and I come and I stay in the hotel and I buy some gas and I go to Walmart and I buy something at McDonald's. Okay, so who's benefiting? Number one is Okay, I am, because I'm getting products and services, aren't I? Okay, who else is benefiting? I'm sorry, I can't hear in the air. I mean, that's
The hotel?
the hotel, because they had to pay sales tax, but they made money because I stayed there, didn't they? All right. Who else? The restaurant, because I went there and I bought a big old meal for 3 people. I had to pay sales tax, but the restaurant, because they make profit when they sell me a meal, they made money so that they can pay salaries and hire people to work there, and they have jobs. The gas station's the same. Walmart, if I had to go there and buy groceries, whatever. So that's the revenue stream. Tourism is a component of that. Lots of sales tax is paid in Springdale that has nothing to do with tourism. Sam's Club sells lots of stuff, and there's a lot of sales tax coming to Springdale because we have Sam's Club here. But tourism is a growing component, as you can see. Those hotels, if we had a Hamburger tax, it'd be a lot more. But we just have a hotel tax, and look how that's growing year after year. That can be used to get more people to come here, to spend money here, to help the businesses here that hire people that live in Springdale so their families can have more money to go on vacation and buy new cars. And so that's why we have the emphasis on tourism. So with that, what questions might you have? Yep. Oh, she has to bring the microphone.
Would we get more if we had just the hamburger tax instead of the hotel tax? Like if it was flopped, like flip-flopped? Do you think we would get more revenue in, or
If we didn't have
if
the
we
hotel
didn't have the
tax?
hotel tax and we just had the hamburger tax?
No, and it has to do with, and you can have varying amounts of sales tax, but we have more hotel revenue than we would for a hamburger tax. So if we were to get rid of one and take the other, I couldn't swear to you what those numbers were, but I'm pretty sure that wouldn't be more. Now, an interesting aspect of this is, yeah, if we had a hamburger tax, we would have more money to spend on advertising and promotion. We don't currently have as many restaurants as some of our neighboring cities that do have a hamburger tax. So the total amount of money that, say, Fayetteville has to spend on advertising and promotion is significantly more than we have, because they have two streams of tourism revenue coming in. And so they've got more money to spend to promote. So we have to take what we have and use it wisely. We want to get the biggest bang for our buck. We're thankful for what we have. We don't spend a lot of money saying, well, I wish we had this, wish we had that. This is what we have, and how can we use it most effectively to tell the story that Springdale is a great place to visit, live, work, and play. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to convince people to do. Not everybody who comes here to visit is going to move here because they're tourists. But there are people who come here to visit. Maybe they're a company that has a meeting or a conference, and they will bring people here. Well, they're not going to move here, but they may say, that was a pretty nice place, and it's easy to get to, and I may bring my family back and go to a minor league baseball game, or we really like rodeo, and we'll go to the Rodeo of the Ozarks, or the Arts Center of the Ozarks, or Shiloh Museum, which is not public, but or the Arkansas and Missouri Railroad, or the only indoor ice skating rink in Northwest Arkansas. That's another thing that we didn't talk about. It really didn't have. It's not necessarily tied to revenue specifically, but Springdale is very unique in our state in that we have so many visitor venues, destinations for someone who wanted to come, and while they were in the area, well, yeah, we've never ice skated, or wait, I can get on a train and ride through the mountains like they did in the 1930s on a restored passenger car, or minor league baseball, or whatever. So that's it's all about telling our story that Springdale is a great place to live, work, and play. It really is. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you distinguish if a place has a hamburger tax or not?
Well, a city council can do that. Generally, it's a vote of the people. It requires a referendum for go to the ballot, and the voters would go and say, yes, we want to do that, or no, we don't, generally.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Bill.